Hey everyone, Daniel here with Slow Haste, where we talk about synths, electronic music, and the creative process. Today I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to dismantle my modular synth rig. I'll kind of talk you through why I'm doing this as I take everything apart, but just as a quick intro, I just really haven't been using my modular rig as much as I thought I would, especially with the recent addition of the Digitact and the Digatone to my setup. Those have kind of become the focus of what I'm using to create music. So I kind of thought I would just ramble a little bit as I dismantle my modular system and talk about what I'm gonna keep to swap in and out of a smaller skiff rig that I have. So let's head over there and get to work. Okay, so we gotta start somewhere. I'll start with pressure points. This is a pretty cool module. So yeah, I've actually been considering getting rid of pressure points for a while. And to be honest, I've just found that after getting something that you can like predefine the parameters for any given step and like play chromatically, it just seems kind of redundant to have in my setup. Pardon me while I struggle to get this ribbon cable out. So yeah, basically you can set any of these 4 pads to lock 4 different parameters into place, or 3 different parameters, sorry. So yeah, that in combination with Pam's new workout, which is like an 8-channel sequencer, basically made me realize that I can do what I'm doing with modular in a single box, and that single box is the Digitact. And I know that this workflow isn't going to be the best for everybody, but I basically found that like the 8 voices on the Digitact were like 8 separate modular voices, right? But they each have their own routing, they each have their own filter, they each have their own effect send. So it's like I can do way more with the Digitact than I could conceive of doing with my modular. And like, that's not to say with complex routing and whatnot that this is way more powerful. Like, there are different tools for different types of people. And I had a ton of fun with this rig. I made the most of my most recent album, Alpine Lights, by doing like experimental sound design and then sequencing stuff on the OP1 after I created with the modular. And that's not something I could have done with the Digitact, and I don't think I'll ever really get sounds like that again. But I think that my creative output has kind of like evolved from those types of needs and wants to switch over to something a little bit more immediate, perhaps. So yeah, Pam's new workout and pressure points made me realize the sort of tactility of the sequencing that I wanted in my electronic music rig. Yeah, so I'm gonna be moving those 2 modules along. Yeah, it's really interesting. I've mentioned this before in a video, but I had a Digitact at one point, and I've had an issue in the past with like purely sequence-based devices. They haven't gelled with me. When I learned how to use Logic Pro, I wasn't really using like loops or anything like that. I was live recording instruments. And when I got the OP1, it kind of like set that workflow into stone even more. So when I tried to use sequencers, I think I struggled not having that control over like the parameter of time and being locked to a grid. So anyways, I had the Digitact and that didn't really work out for me, and I ended up returning it actually due to a hardware issue I was having. I may have stuck with it if I didn't have that issue. Just one of the stereo outputs was not working. And at the same time, I was really interested in modular. So I got a Make Noise skiff, and I got Plaits, Marbles, and Rosie. So Plaits was my synth voice, Marbles was the sequencer or like random CV generator, and then Rosie was the output module. And you may have noticed my little blank panels. They just come from the Mutable Instruments cardboard wrappings that I cut out and pieced them together, so my dog's dusty fur doesn't get trapped in the circuitry. Anyways, let's talk about some modules that I am going to keep for my skiff. So one of my favorite modules ever is Mutable Instruments Tides. It is a lot of things. It is an envelope generator, it is an LFO, it is a synth voice, and it has 4 outputs that all work in mathematical relationships to each other. And this is the voice that I almost always start my modular pieces with now, because I'm really comfortable with it and familiar with how to shape the sounds. So this is going in the keep pile. Along with that is Veils. It's just a quad VCA basically. And it is a perfect companion to Tides because you can route the 4 outputs of Tides through the 4 channels of Veils, and then use a sequencer to rhythmically automate the output of that. So that could be a lot of fun to get some cool arpeggios and swells and other things. So I'm definitely keeping Tides and Veils. And then my first dedicated sampler, not including the OP1, is Make Noise Morphogene. It is like a micro sound, crazy effects forward sampler, and you can really do a lot with it. I like to take organic sounds from instruments like my guitar. I sample a lot of guitar into it. I take a lot of old loops that I have saved on my Boss guitar looper and process stuff with the morphogene just to get really interesting textures. And I've been doing a lot of like sampling into the Digitact with the morphogene. It's a really great sound design tool, and it can pull off a lot of stuff sampler-wise that something like the Digitact cannot because of its experimental nature. So definitely keeping this. So when I got this IntelliGel case, it had the 1U row, and I got a lot of these utilities that I don't really use. So I have like I don't remember what it's called. It's like a noise module, and it comes with like a slew control or a slew output. And it's really great for creating noise. That's what I used it for in the couple of patches I implemented in, but again, not worth keeping in my opinion for my purposes, but a great utility nonetheless. And that's the thing with modular, is I found that there is a lot to sink your money into that you might not use very frequently. And to me, for my personal uses, I guess that became a bit problematic. I'm lucky enough to have a job that gives me a little bit of disposable income to funnel into this hobby of mine, but I don't just want to like throw all this money out the window and have these unused things laying around. So I would much rather pass them along to somebody who will get use out of them. This is one of the 1U modules that I do use a lot. It is a 4-channel attenuator basically. And it's a really great utility for mixing, especially when you have all of this fun CV and audio going every which way that you want to mix. So yeah, I'm getting rid of all of those 1U tiles. Here's one that I'm keeping. This is a clone of Mutable Instruments rings in a very small form factor, and it was like half the price, so can't say no to that. Rings is a very, I don't know, it's a big trope in modular. You've definitely heard it before, even if you don't necessarily think you have. It's a physical, kind of like a physical object emulator that emulates like striking and plucking of like a string or a surface. That's a very simple explanation of what it can do, but yeah, it's a really great module, and when you need that sound, it has that sound. And then Plaits, one of my first modules. I'll probably hang on to this as well, just because it's a really versatile synth voice, and I really like some of the bass sounds you can create with it. And I've sampled plenty of those into my into my Digitact as well. It was also my first module, one of my first modules, so I don't know if I can let it go. Okay, so we got a bunch of Mutable Instrument stuff coming up here. Beads is the successor to Clouds, and I'm definitely hanging on to this because it is similar to how I feel about morphogene in terms of sampling, where morphogene is just like, it's a sampler, yeah, but it can get super experimental and you can get some really crazy sounds by doing just a tiny bit of tweaking. So Beads is the same way. Like, once you learn what all the different controls do, you can get some wild stuff really quickly, but it's also very controllable, especially if you know how to use your CV and you take advantage of like the random attenuation inputs that are on the module. It is just an absolute blast. Yeah, definitely one of the best granular texture generators I have encountered. So blinds is kind of like veils, except you can get negative output from it. And I'm just trying to explain this in layman's terms as much as possible because I know not everyone here is super into modular. But yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna keep blinds or not. I primarily use it for side chaining because you can pump the input into the negative rhythmically with like a sequencer or even with audio for a kind of weird effect. And it's really cool to do that rhythmically, but the Digitact has great compression and side chaining options, and you can just kind of like manually enter that into the sequence data in the Digitact. So I don't know if I have a need for it. And then marbles, one of my other first modules. This is great. I actually kind of got into modular once I started doing some research on marbles and understood what it could do. It is basically a random CV generator, but you have a lot of control over some of the fine tuning of the parameters. So you can basically set it within a scale, within a certain range of notes, with a certain level of randomness in terms of rhythm and pitch and note length. And you can basically just like let it run. And then if you find a pattern that you like, you can lock it into place. And it just has a lot to offer. But yeah, this is a really fun module, and I'm probably gonna hang on to this just because it is kind of like beads, really good at creating a lot with a little bit of user input. And it comes up with stuff that I wouldn't come up with on my own. So I really appreciate it for that. Okay, my only filter with my multi-voice setup. This is something that also kind of struck me the other day. I was like, how did I get away with only using one filter in my entire modular rig when each voice on the Digitact has its own filter? And I use I'm not shy about using the filter to like notch in a sound on the Digitact. But I guess that's like a creative confine that my modular system had, is that it forced me to choose voices that fit well together without having to like use a lot of filtering. But I really like using filters as like an effect too, in addition to just a utility. So I do like having it. I do like having that flexibility in the Digitact, but the Sisters filter by Whimsical Wraps by Mannequins is just like a great sounding filter, and it has this like really kind of like weird organic sounding digital type of distortion. It does clip really easily, and that's something that people complain about, but I don't know, I kind of used it to a creative advantage. So I think I'll hang on to that because I think it's important to have a filter in a modular setup. And then I have these two mixers. I might get rid of the Rosie and keep the Listen 4, just because you have options for stereo routing. For the inputs, you have multiple channels of stereo input for the Listen 4, and that's something that's really important to me. As great of a utility as the Rosie is, I just think the Listen 4 is going to better suit my needs, and I don't need two output modules / mixers in a single skiff. So yeah, the skiff I'm downsizing to is basically just like one section of this. So it doesn't have the 1 euro, and yeah, it's just 104 HP, I think. So it'll fit a decent amount, and I'm not gonna be able to fit everything that I have in it, but I am gonna hang on to a couple of modules just in case I wanna like switch them out for a project or anything, once I sort of solidify what I want the actual skiff to kind of permanently contain. So maybe I'll make another video about that. Hey, if you are enjoying this type of content, definitely let me know down in the comments. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. It definitely helps with the channel's visibility. and allows me to continue putting time into making music for you all and into making educational content and planning this. Every little bit helps. So in that realm, just to do a little bit of shameless self-promotion, I have a Patreon that you can check out all the perks for down in the bio if you're interested in taking some lessons. I offer lessons. If you just want to support the channel monetarily, you are more than welcome to do so. And I also have some bonus music that you can get if you want to become a Patreon member. So that'd be great if you would check that out. Okay, well, I got everything out of the skiff. I have been meaning to do this for a very long time, and I thought, why not make a video out of it to kind of explain my thought process behind it. So yeah, the next step for me is to sell off all the modules that I'm not keeping, and then to kind of solidify the rig that I am going to keep. I definitely think this would be like a cool video series to give everyone progress updates on why I'm sort of getting out of the modular game a little bit, not completely, just a little bit, in favor of a more predefined hardware box sort of direction. I think it's just the best in terms of what's going to be the most productive for me, and also might be able to fund some cool new purchases or other things that could help improve the channel. Anyways, as always, thank you so much for joining. I hope you enjoy your day. Take care of yourself. Peace.